And we're back. And I'm going to be turning over the hosting duties to Kelly. Again, Jeff, thank you again for joining us. And stick around for cosplay information that I think you're going to find fascinating and wonderful. I've been Dan Johnson. You've been a wonderful audience, and I will see you guys later.
All right. Hey guys, how's it going? Robin and Scott and Bob, are you there?
Everybody.
Here, let me.
Hey, everybody.
Unmute. And I invited 3 of my dear friends who make their own costumes, and I thought it would be fun to talk about the making of cosplay and also just all the fun things about this hobby that I adore so much. So if you guys could go around and introduce yourselves, let's just start with Bob, go in alphabetical order.
Oh, okay,
So
great.
Bob, you're up.
All right. My name is Bob Mask, and that's the first question I usually get when I meet people. Yes, Mask is
Bob.
my last name.
Are you-
Swear it really is. I have actually been doing this a little less time than Kelly. Next month will be my 10th year anniversary of starting down this path, and it has been absolutely amazing so far. And I have to admit, this is really a special treat for me, because I'm sitting on this panel with one of my idols and inspirations. And I'll probably talk about this later, but a good bit of the stuff that I've taught myself how to do, I learned to do from watching Scott's informational videos. So this is actually be sitting here with him is kind of a big thing for me. So if I get a little fanboyish at some point, just, ignore me and we'll keep going.
Well, the admiration's mutual, Bob. You're an inspiration. I love seeing your stuff online. It's fantastic. Does that mean I'm up next?
I think you're up, bud.
All right, I'm going to go. All right, so, well, as Bob mentioned, my name's Scott Bayles. I've been cosplaying just maybe a smidgen longer than these guys. I think it's been 12 years. 2008 is when I got started. And really, I still feel like a beginner sometimes. We really got into cosplaying because of Superman Celebration. And well, I can tell that story as we go on.
Go ahead, introduce yourself.
But yeah, Superman has been a huge influence in the reason why I cosplay, and actually in my morals and values and all kinds of stuff like that. So I hope we get to talk a little bit about that too.
All right, well, I guess I'm next. I'm Robin Johnson. I've been costuming longer than these guys a little bit. I probably started back in 2002, but my Superman celebration was actually, I think it was 2007 I didn't dress up, and in 2008 I started dressing up there. So I've been doing it for a while. I think that, also I follow Scott quite a bit. I actually started back on on Youku. They have the League of Heroes is where I started following, and then I noticed some of the things there that I was kind of learning from the people there, how to sew and things. And then I met Scott actually at Superman Celebration in Metropolis, and I started following him. And you look at his work, and it's inspiring to make sure you want to up your game a lot. And he actually teaches you a lot of the tips a lot of people don't try to keep hidden, so that their stuff looks this way or that way. But he's very open with a lot of things he does with helping you learn how to do it right. So I appreciate you putting the videos up that you've done, Scott.
Oh, thanks, Robin. And I will never forget the first time I met you, actually. It was, of course, at the Superman Celebration, like you mentioned. And it was my second time cosplaying. I'll talk about my first costume later. It was terrible. But the second year I came back and I had a much better costume. And you were with a group of other cosplayers and you walked over to me and you said, "Hey, did you make that suit yourself?" And I just got so excited that somebody noticed and wanted to ask me about it. And I was like, yeah, I did. And then you mentioned to me the League of Heroes. And so that week I got on and I learned so much from that website. I owe so much to Jeff, Bryn, and everything that they gathered on that site for us to learn from.
Yeah, it was amazing. I hate that it hasn't been as popular with everything, with social media growing and everything. It kind of went downhill, I think, but I still go back there every once in a while to check. But I remember that weekend, man, it was really nice. And I mean, like you said, your costumes were amazing then, and they just keep, every time I look, they keep getting that much better. So,
Oh, thank you.
All right, so we're getting into this a little bit, but do you guys want to go around and tell me your origin story? Like, how did you get into cosplay?
I'd be happy to get us started if you want. I have to give you a little bit of background. A lot of you know I'm a pastor, and I started preaching when I was 15. So back then I would wear a suit and tie to church every Sunday, and I would go to yard sales or to Goodwill, places like that, to buy suits. And I had a friend whose mom was a seamstress, and she showed me how to hem them and alter them so that it would fit me correctly. And so I learned a little bit about sewing back when I was in high school. And, you know, I never used that talent ever again. Probably almost 10 years went by, and my family and I moved to Rosiclare, Illinois, which is just about 40 minutes away from Metropolis. And being a huge Superman fan, I was excited that we lived close, and obviously went to the Superman celebration. And I can't remember if it was the first or second year. I think it was the second year they had the Guinness World Record attempt. And I think a lot of you were probably there for that and remember it and maybe were a part of it. But it sounded really exciting to me. And I'm like, oh, I'd love for my son and I, who was then 3 years old, to participate in that. And I got online and I looked at, you know, all like the store-bought costumes, the Ruby's costumes were all just terrible. I didn't want to wear that out in public. And I found a few places where you could buy stuff like on eBay. There was like action costumes down in Brazil. Those costumes were like $1,000. I found a couple others where, you know, you could spend $300 to $500. And I'm like, man, that's just more money than I have. And so I'm like, you know what, I'm just going to try to do this myself. And I did. I got online, I ordered fabric, and those first costumes I made were pretty bad. I used a pair of long johns. I cut them apart and made my pattern using that. And for the S, I thought it would be a great idea and it would be easier to use dot, like what's it called, when you run it through the printer and then you heat transfer it on, like you print your own heat transfer, which turned out to be a terrible idea, because then once we got out there in the hot, it was like 100 degrees that day, and the ink started running, and so it had like this Death of Superman look to it as it was running down my chest. And it was terrible, but it was still fun. That was the first year I met Noelle Neal. She was there that year, and I got a picture with her in that costume. And so I still have that picture, even though I kind of like to forget that first costume. I still have that picture because Noelle Neal's in it with me. And as awful as I thought it was, and I was looking around seeing like, man, there's a lot of people with really great costumes. One person in particular, who I didn't know at the time, but turned out later, well, it was Stephanie Perrin. The first time I met her, she came up to me and she complimented my costume. I'm like, wow, I don't know if she was being really nice to me or if she actually thought it was good. I don't know, but it was really encouraging. And I'm like, you know what, I'm going to do this again next year. I'll make something better and we'll come back. And I just stuck with it ever since. It's been a lot of fun.
I had a similar experience in my Black Canary swimsuit that I threw to get at the mall with a Hannah Montana wig. God bless Metropolis and that supportive community, because if I had gone to a con, I probably would never have cosplayed again. Because they're like the bigger cons, they're kind of mean sometimes. Not always. Depends on the con.
Well, actually, I'm feeling,
Sorry.
I have yet to make it to Metropolis, and it is actually one of the things I really, really want to do. I know so many people that are, spend time there now that I feel like if I showed up, I would have enough people to hang out with. But I'm gonna get there. I really am. But as for this, gosh, well, technically, and Kelly has seen this picture. My very first costume was in 1974. So I may have been doing it longer than a lot of people actually. When I was in kindergarten, my family and I moved back to Hawaii, and my dad was in the Air Force. And so we got there, and I was really bummed about being there and not having any friends or anything like that. And so my mom decided she was going to do something to cheer me up. So she got a couple issues of my original Teen Titans from back in the 70s and made me a Robin costume. And I mean, completely from scratch. And so that was my very first costume. And I know Kelly has seen a picture of that. But anyway, but starting this, well, I've always been a comic book fan my entire life. And then when my daughter, who now is actually an artist, graduated from Ringling School of Art and Design in Sarasota last year. But when she was in high school, she got into an anime, I guess you would call it a phase. And so she asked me, she said, well, didn't you used to collect comic books? I said, yeah, I've got like 10 long boxes down here in the basement. And she said, well, what if would you take me to a comic book store? I was like, sure, that's, great. So we went to a comic book store and wandered around a little bit. And as we were driving back to the house, she said, have you ever been to a comic book convention? And I said, sweetie, the last comic book convention I went to was 1989, right before the Burton Batman movie came out. It was in like a Days Inn in Dallas, Texas, and the whole thing was in the little ballroom with lots of people with tables and long boxes, and that was pretty much I did get to meet Denny O'Neil. That was the highlight of the day. But I said, I have no idea what's going on, now, all the cool things that are happening. So me being me and being a bit of an extrovert, I went and Googled comic book conventions. And the interesting thing was I noticed that a lot of the same people kept showing up in pictures. And so I said, okay, after I had read a little bit more, I found some of these folks on Facebook and just out of the blue sent a note that said, hi, my name's Bob Mask. You don't have any idea who I am, but I live in Denver, and my daughter is interested in comic books, and I've been all my life. And I was just wondering if you had any, tell me about conventions that you go to and anything cool. And the really awesome thing was I had that day, I probably had 10 or 15 people respond to me, saying how excited they were that I had reached out to them. And so that was kind of the start. And so my goal was within the year, I was going to go to a convention. Of course, by this time, my daughter had really lost interest. So it was just me. But as I was getting ready, I had a number of people telling me, you should really consider wearing a costume. It's a lot of fun to go to. And I was like, okay, well, I haven't really done that in a long, long time, but what the heck? And ended up, my very first con that I went to was MegaCon in Orlando in 2012. And a lot of the folks who hang out at Metropolis were there, as well as some other folks that I met online. I met Bren. I think a little actually before that. Bren was one of the folks that really helped me. He actually was the person that helped me put together the second costume I ever made, which was Wildcat. And so yeah, that's kind of how things started. And since then I went from having one costume to, I think there's about maybe 20 in there now. So yeah, it's been fun, and I'm looking forward to doing a lot more too.
And what about you, Robin? What's your origin story?
Listening to Bob's story, you know, it's funny because I'm a military brat myself. And so I can remember back when we moved around. I remember the first time my mom actually made a costume. I was actually Cat in the Hat for Dr. Seuss Day. And it kind of built up a fancy of wanting to dress up here and there. Never missed a Halloween, but as I got older, you know, things don't fit, like Scott said, you know, you just don't, some of them don't fit the way you want them to. So it's kind of, when I started sewing for myself, I think I did it to impress a girl at one time. It was really just, we were making a comforter. She asked me, could I sew? I lied and said yes. Ran home and asked my mom how, and that's how it all started there. Once you learn that you can do a couple things here and there, you know, you play with stuff. But as far as for me, once I got started sewing, I think the first convention I went to was the Superman celebration. And being a college football player, I was kind of used to tights and stuff. So wearing fitted clothes weren't really an issue, and I knew where to get, you know, decent tights and stuff. So I know Scott says he started off with the long johns. I just went straight to tights and did not exactly consider the factor that they stretch more than, you know, the spandex stretches a lot more than regular, like just two-way stretch stuff. So my first couple costumes were really horrendous when you think about trying to like account for the stretch and things like that. I think my first costume I personally made it for Superman Celebration was steel. And like Bob said also, the first person that really motivated me was Brent, and that's how I found out about the League of Heroes. He loved that steel suit, and to this day he'll tell me, man, I really love that suit. But I look back at it and I'm like, man, I threw that together with just some halfway gray stretch fabric that barely fit. And like you say, the summers in Metropolis, my gosh, they were so hot because that stuff was almost as thick as long johns, and I'm sitting there in Metropolis heat, you know, over 100 degrees, trying to look nice, and you know, a plastic mask on for the helmet. So it was a rough start. But once I did get on League of Heroes, you know, you learn the little tricks and trades here. You learn how to, you know, actually measure and account for the stretch that you need and stuff like that. So, but if you look back, I think what really got me into it was the factor of moving around so much with the military, that I started with comic books, and when I started dressing up, you know, it's like, there it is. You know, you want to be those heroes that you look up to. And like Scott said earlier, you know, Superman's morals alone make you want to, you know, appreciate who he is. So, yeah, so that was really my first time was Metropolis with the steel suit. And I guess starting off with the tights that I had and cutting those up the seam and using those as patterns was my first costume experience. So.
And Robin, I've told you this, but you're responsible for my origin story. So, because I went to Metropolis and I'd always loved Halloween, and I'm walking around in Metropolis in normal clothes, and I see Robin on the street in, I think it was Flash. I'm like, I look at Robin and I'm like, wait. And then I look at my sister, I'm like, people could be in costume here, and it's not the costume contest, and it's not Halloween. This is awesome. And I dragged her to the mall and put together pell-mell Black Canary costume with swimsuit, fishnets, Hannah Montana wig. It was terrible. I will proudly show this picture because whatever, I fun. And people were supportive. But Robin, so I thank you for like showing me the way.
No, not at all. You appreciate Metropolis showing all of us the way there, the ones that've been there.
So the next discussion is what are the tools of the trade? So like, what tools can you guys not live without? What do you always keep in your craft?
Right there. Actually, the guys were talking about sewing and
All right, guys. So sorry, I think there's a little bit of lag. So what are the tools of the trade? Like, what can't you live without?
Okay. So so I was saying that I actually learned to sew about 9 years ago. I was visiting my mom and dad down in Texas for Thanksgiving, and my mom was doing some little project, and I thought to myself, you know, if I could learn a little bit of this, that would be really helpful. And so she started kind of teaching me, and not terribly long after that, she passed. And so I took the little bits that she had taught me and then started to build on those. So probably the most important thing that I have to work on costumes is this sewing machine back here. I have had some really great successes and some horrible failures. And I've learned something from every time I've done that. One of the big things that I'm using now, and again, I learned this from Scott, is I was the first couple capes that I made out of pleather. They were the very heavy non-stretch boating vinyl type pleather, and now I actually use a 4-way stretch lightweight pleather. I've made with that I've made, oh goodness, at least three different capes. One of them is for a black Batman cape for my Alex Ross style Batman. One of them is a blue cape for Batman, and then I did a dark brown and black lining cape for my Night Owl from Watchmen. And each one of those are that 4-way stretch pleather that is just the idea that it's just so light. It's crazy, and it makes the most fantastic whooshing sound you've ever heard when you go to flip it and do it's freaking awesome. So that, and I'm actually I love to test things. I love to try new things. When I've made, I've tried to make cloth cowls. I went through the experiment of trying to make the Batman cowl that I could wear and then push back like a hood, and that had relative, not fantastic success with that, but it wasn't horrible. And then also I'm about to start down the road of 3D printing and electronics. So hopefully by the end of 2021, I will have a Mark 46 Iron Man done with repulsors and light up eyes and all that good stuff. But I love to try new stuff. I always love to try to learn from people. And I'm constantly, when we were still having cons before COVID, I would see somebody who did something amazing, and I would go and I'd say, would you mind telling me how you did that or whatever? I sent Scott more than one note about asking him how to do stuff. And Robin, after looking at some of your stuff, but I'm going to be sending you some notes too, man. And to be fair, I have seen your stuff before. I didn't realize that was you, because we have a lot of the same, a lot of mutual friends. Yeah. And every time I would always say, now that guy knows what he's doing. So, but yeah, I don't guess I have, other than my sewing machine. I, I just like to try new stuff. And sometimes you find out the best things by accident.
I'm kind
That
of,
was amazing. So now you know him.
Nice to formally meet you. Yeah, because I've seen your work online also.
so I'm
Isn't it-
similar to Bob in the tools of my trade. My bread and butter is my sewing machine and spandex. I know a lot of people that do a lot of like the movie accurate costumes and stuff like that, and those are amazing. And I've tried my hand at it a little bit here and there. I've made a couple of Iron Man suits using EVA foam, and those things are fun. But I always end up falling back to spandex and the sewing machine. I really enjoy the classic comic book style costumes. Just the ones that are made out of solid spandex, not painted or airbrushed or dye subbed, all that stuff. Those things are great, and I've had some costumes like that I've made, but I just really enjoy like the classic looking Superman, Batman, Spider-Man, all those with the traditional spandex. And so that's what I've always fallen back on. And I've probably only had 2 sewing machines in the entire time I've been costuming. And I don't have an expensive one. I talk about it in some of my YouTube videos. You can go to Walmart and get any sewing machine and do the stuff that I do. It's just a matter of learning to feel the machine. I tried teaching my son how to sew, and he's kind of getting there, but I realized through that process that there's so much of it that there's not words to explain how you do this. It's a feeling. As you're putting the fabric through the machine, you can tell whether it's right or not. And I can't put myself in his hands and feel it for him. And so it's hard to explain to people sometimes, but I guess it just comes with practice. You get the feel for it as you go, and there it is.
Yeah, now I like these gentlemen both have said, and I agree 100%. My sewing machine is the one thing I can't go without. Regardless of the fabric, like Scott said, once you have a feel for the fabric you're using and you have a feel for the machine you're using, you can go very far with it. I'm also not really into a lot of the dye subs and a couple other suits that are out there. I like the more classic look. Now, I'm not gonna lie, I have a couple myself when I did a Spider-Man or when I've done a movie type, that Batman had like the composite Superman Batman, where I have the new movie suits with the muscles and everything. I thought it would give a different look, but I always do go back to my sewing machine and spandex. Actually, spandex was the first thing, like a stretchy fabric was the first thing I learned to sew on really on my own. So when people ask me how is it I put costumes out pretty fast, because I mean, that's what I know. It's harder for me to actually put together like a Jedi uniform, something that is less stretch, because there is more, to me, there's more room for error by measurements and stuff. I've learned how, for me personally, how the spandex fits me. I know where to hit this curve, where to do that. And even when I help other people, it's easier for me with spandex. Over time, I think I don't even know how many suits I've made since 2008 probably, but unlike Scott, I've gone through machines. I've burned motors out. I typically, every time I go to Metropolis, I bring a machine with me, just because I'll be inspired by the people there, and I'll go back to the hotel and see if the local Walmart, they used to have a Hancock's or the Joanne now. I would go to those stores and just see what I could pick up, what I could find, and go, just thinking because of what I've seen out in Metropolis. And I always talk about Metropolis because that's the one that I actually call home. Through ups and downs, as far as Metropolis goes, to me, I tell everyone that's the one you have to go to, because it's more of a family reunion and you meet friends, you meet people, and not just out there like a Comic-Con that can be very competitive in that aspect. So I credit Metropolis with a lot of things that I've learned, because pulling people aside, being inspired there, seeing things and going from there, that's where I started going with that's just pretty much what kept me going. But as far as the real tools I need now, like I said, it's the sewing machine, my spandex, and I've actually gone more into some foam use. Scott mentioned Iron Man suits. I got into making those with Pepcura. I don't like to paint, so I actually typically will use thin foam with the fabrics I like and kind of wrap those up and sew in the seams there so that I get the color I like. And that's why I brought this out here. This is fabric and foam, this helmet here. It gave me the shape I wanted here, and it stays where it is, and I don't have to paint it. But that adds into the factor of needing my sewing machine. No matter what I do, I always do typically go back to something that has a sewing edge to it.
Yeah, I can relate to what Robin's saying there, because I've done a lot of foam and then cover it with some kind of material, whether it's spandex or something metallic. My wife's Wonder Woman costume, all the armored bits are, 2mm, 3mm foam and then wrapped in metallic spandex. It turns out really well. And then you don't have to worry about paint, and you don't have to worry about the paint coming off on things and stuff like that. So I enjoy doing that.
Would go with what Bob said. Listening to him, it's the factor of not being afraid to fail at something new. I was afraid of trying Iron Man stuff. My first Iron Man suit, I followed the old school with cardstock, tried to resin stuff, tried to Bondo it. I looked like Iron Man that had been through the first movie overseas. I mean, it was all messed up. I didn't know how to stand. I didn't know any of that. And so, but I tried it, and I learned what I liked and disliked about it. So then I tried the foam. Then I tried to do one with covering with fabric. Just the things that are outside of my element, I tried. And the one thing I think about that, when I say be afraid of failure, don't be afraid of making mistakes. I don't really consider it failure. And when Bob made that comment, the first thing he said was, every project I did, I learned something from. So that's why when you say you fail, it's okay to do that as long as you're learning from it. And so my biggest advice to people is find your inspiration and don't be afraid to go after it. Try those new things. If it seems hard, tinker with it a little bit, piece by piece, but also give yourself the proper time to learn that art, so you're not really getting frustrated, because everything is a learning curve and it takes time.
Yeah, absolutely, Robin. That's yeah. Honestly, I think that just building just a little bit on what Robin said, I think the thing I would tell somebody most is find something that you're excited about. Find something that you really have an investment in, something that find a character that is your favorite character, or find something that you're like, hey, everybody does everybody does Batman, or everybody does Superman or whatever, but nobody does this character. I'm gonna try to do this. Why hasn't anybody ever done it? Is it hard? Is it just so just finding something that gets you going, that gets you motivated to want to not just throw your hands up in the air and say, oh well, that didn't work, I'm not gonna, if you really want to go after it, and have fun. My gosh, I don't know how many times I've told people, I've in the past, I have had people ask me why I've never done a contest, why I've never entered into a cosplay contest or costume or whatever. And I was like, because that's not what I'm doing. I'm doing this to have fun, and I'm doing it to meet fun people and make friends and enjoy myself. And once I start trying to go, oh my gosh, if I can't make this better than Scott, or I can't make this better than Robin, I'm not going to win the whatever. And that to me, that takes the fun out of it. Now, I'm not saying that for everybody, because obviously some people really like to do that and they like to just, you know, show their talent, and that's great. That's fantastic. If that's what gets you motivated, if that's what makes you do what you want to do, then great. But for me, it's just always been about having fun.
Yeah, I would just second what both of these guys said. I agree completely. You know, when it comes to not being afraid to make mistakes, as long as we've been doing this, I still make mistakes all the time. I would encourage you, if you're going to start sewing, find a seam ripper that you really love, because you're going to use it a lot. I always, you know, there's always like I attach a sleeve the wrong direction, or I put something on backwards, and I just got to rip it off. And, you know, I still make those mistakes all the time. And, you know, when it comes to having fun, don't be so caught up in having like the best looking or the perfect version of your character. Just enjoy the fact that you did it yourself. You know, that is a big accomplishment. And one of the downsides to, you know, for a lot of us, when we first got into this, cosplay was not all that popular. And today it really is. And you can find, you know, Facebook groups and whatever, where there's literally thousands of people all cosplaying Captain America or Superman or whoever. And those groups are good for a lot of things. Like you can learn tips and tricks, and you can, you know, connect with other people who have that same interest. But the downside is that it kind of generates a lot of competitiveness. Like, oh, that guy's looks better than mine. I need to buy a better this, or I need to make a better that. And it shouldn't be about that competition or about always trying to have the best one. Just have fun doing it and enjoy the fact that you did it yourself. I always encourage people to do it yourself. Doesn't matter what your budget is, rather than spending hundreds or thousands of dollars paying someone else to do it for you, because you'll have fun and you'll learn something in the process.
How about for those, I'm sorry, how about for those of us, thank you, Bob. How about for those of us who may not be as talented as, say, a Bob Mask or a Scott or a Robin Johnson? And I must admit, it's kind of ironic that someone named Robin is dressed as Superman, but I always go as the Green Hornet, because Bob, as you alluded to earlier, you said you kind of want to do something that no one else does. So I have not run into, well, no, I take that back. I've only run into one other Green Hornet, but that's in 10 years of cosplay. And I kind of do him because very few people do him. And I just simply bought the green fedora. I was able to find a green overcoat. Then, of course, the shirt and tie is simple. And I got a few props to go with that also. So what would you say to those people who may not be as talented, who may not have the seam reapers that you guys have talked about?
I would say, Stuart, I would have them talk to you, because that is exactly, that is it. The first time I ever tried anything, I actually did a closet cosplay. I went into my closet. I had a black overcoat. I had a black fedora, and I found a piece of red material, and I tied it around under my neck. And I had my wife. I got in some shaded stuff, and I had my wife take a couple pictures, and I was the shadow. That was
nice.
That was actually the very first one. I've never done anything with it because it was only like this, and I didn't have any. But it was exactly. And you know what? That's something I just say when we were talking about what we use. Goodwill, thrift shops, things like that. You are going to find so much good stuff. I kid you not, I have a full-length black leather duster, 100% leather, hanging in my closet that I got at Goodwill for $25. And I didn't need it for anything at the time, but I found it, and I was like, I'm getting that, because you just never know when you're going to need something like that. And I've used it for pirate costumes and things like that. It's been great. So yeah, no, you're right on do what you can do and have fun with it. And later on, if you say, hey, maybe I want to try, the other thing is I tell people is don't get overwhelmed with a costume. If you want to make the perfect Captain America suit, think about how you want to make the cowl, and then just work on that. And when you've got it done, when you really like it, or you're learning more, you like, okay, I have 2 Captain America costumes. One of them is a comic book version, and I've made 3 different cowls for that suit because I've made one, and then I've thought about a way to do something better, or I thought was better, so I made a new. So that costume has had 3 different cowls. The other thing that is the big thing is don't get so wrapped up in what everybody thinks it's supposed to look like. Scott said something about this earlier, and I couldn't agree more. I have two of my favorite costumes. One of them is my Night Owl from Watchmen, and it is a mashup of all the different comic book versions and the movie version. It's so like if somebody sees it, they're going to go, oh, that's Night Owl from before Watchmen, or that's Night Owl from the movie, but it looks enough like Night Owl that people go, oh, okay, that's Night Owl. That's cool. I have what I call my cinematic universe inspired cat costume. That actually started as a Ruby's costume. The base was a Ruby's costume from the first Avengers movie, and I tore it all apart and made different. Every time that costume evolved over time, and it is the one that I wear now is nothing like the first one that I put on, and it doesn't look like any Captain America from any of the Marvel movies, but you look at it and you go, that's Captain America, and that's you've made it your own. It's not necessarily attached to anything; it's yours, and that's awesome. And that's even, not that I don't love people coming and telling me that my costumes look good. When somebody tells me a costume that's not based on anything looks good, that makes me feel amazing, because that just came from me. I have a Blue Lantern costume that I made because I'm a huge fan of the Blue Lanterns. I actually even wear a Blue Lantern ring all the time. But the Blue Lantern costume that I made, I was sitting at work one day doodling, and I designed it. It's nothing that anybody has ever, and so when I wear it, people know it's a Blue Lantern because it's got the symbol on it. But if they tell me they like it, then I'm just that much more pleased because it was something that I did. So anyway, that's a way big answer more to your question, your thoughts than you probably expected.
Let me add to that though.
It's so important. It really is, just to make stuff yours. It doesn't matter how many people do, Batman or Superman. Nobody's going to do it like yours, and that's the key.
The thing is, art is what the artist perceives it to be. So
it's objective.
Yeah. So, but here's the thing: if you make a piece of work, no one can tell you what that work is supposed to look like. And so, what Bob is saying, when he's implementing other characters or other styles to this one character, that's what he perceived it to be. And it's not about talent or whatnot. All of us have our talents in different areas. It's just finding that one that works best for you. I remember the first time I met Bryn, he was in a Mr. Freeze costume. This man, I was like, man, how'd you do this? It looked just like the movie and everything from the Batman and Robin movie. He showed me his thigh coverage. It was half of a trash can, spray painted silver with Taco Bell taco holders on the side. and I'm like, and I'm looking at it and I could not tell, but when I got close, that's exactly what it was. So for me, like they said, going to the Goodwill, everybody at Walmart knows me. I go there just about every other day. I will literally walk up and down the aisles of the clearance and things like that, just looking for anything that might just catch my eye. And I mean, dollar store, anything that I could be like, man, that looks like an art collector. Oh man, that's $1. Let me grab that. Or this looks like this. always think back to Bryn's Mr. Freeze costume, where he said he took stuff that people would throw away pretty much and made it as immaculate as it does. I mean, it looked like he was Arnold walking off the set. And so don't ever sell yourself short thinking about a talent. That you have a talent, you have an eye because you found that fedora, you found what worked for you. So that right there is a talent to see something that works for you when you make it work. So grow on that with the things that you want to make, but don't walk past that $1 bottle because you might be able to cut that in half and it might be a piece that sits on top of a gauntlet as a laser or something like that. There's always ways, but don't sell yourself short when it comes to that.
Yeah, I agree completely. And there are so many costumes that you can make. You don't necessarily have to sew and make it from scratch for it to be your own creation. And Kelly, you know, like she mentioned, her first costume was a swimsuit and fishnet tights and a jacket, and she's perfected that over the years. And that's really just piecing things together. I mean, that's a great way to build a costume. And so if you just, maybe you don't even want to give sewing a try, you can still build a whole lot of different characters just by taking bits and pieces of different things. There's this one costume that I saw at a convention, I think it was in Missouri. It was a pyramid head guy from, I forget the name of the video game, but some of you might be familiar with it. He had this giant pyramid shaped head and he had these dials on the side of the pyramid. And I talked to him, I got up close and asked him about the costume and how he built it. And he mentioned that the dials were actually the caps from laundry detergent. That he took it off the laundry detergent and then attached it to this foam build that he made. And I'm like, that's genius. He just took this totally random thing that everybody has in their house and then incorporated it into his costume. I don't have an eye for that kind of thing, but I love it when other people do because then I can steal their ideas.
Are we at the funny stories?
I think they call that the Ray Harryhausen thing. Ray Harryhausen was always reusing tentacles from one monster and putting them on another monster. And he talks about, oh, I wish that thing were left for a museum, but I cannibalized it and used it in another thing, another movie.
You got a funny story you want to share, Bob?
I do actually. Well, it will probably, hopefully it'll be funny to you guys. It was embarrassing for me. But so we were just talking about costumes evolving and that kind of thing.
Favorite thing about the cosplay community is that there's so many cosplayers who are willing to share.
Yeah.
Yes, please.
So we were talking about evolving. So the one of my favorite costumes now, and it's quite possibly the most comfortable costume that I have, is I wanted to make a Batman suit that was based on Alex Ross's design of Batman, because that is.
All right. Yes, Bob. Start us off with the funny story.
I'm Kelly, would you say?
I think Kelly's got a bit of a delay there.
Okay. So anyway, so the Alex Ross suit is actually a lot of the different things that I've learned to make. So for instance, it's a two-piece suit. It is the top and the bottom are separate. So going to the bathroom is easy. The gauntlets and the gloves are separated so that if I have to do something, I can take the glove off and still keep the gauntlet on and then just tuck it back in when needs be. But anyway, so I'm walking back from one of the areas at Dragon Con 2 years ago to my hotel. And as I'm walking, and I'm in the Alex Ross bat suit. And so as I'm walking past the parking garage, I hear somebody say, "Hey, that's an awesome Alex Ross Batman suit." And so I stopped and turned around to say thank you. And it was a very lovely, taller, redheaded lady. And she was coming out of the parking lot. She had some bags and things. So like, she looked like she was going into the show for something. And I said, "Oh, thank you very much." I said, I'm pleased that you recognized it was an Alex Ross design. And I said, I'm pleased that you recognize that. And I said, "Are you familiar with his work?" And she said, "Well, he's a friend of mine." And as soon as she said that, I realized that the person standing in front of me was Jill Thompson, the comic book artist. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Jill's work. She worked on Wonder Woman with George Perez. She has her own books called Scary Godmother. She's won multiple Eisner Awards and all these kinds of things. And she was the model for the Joker's daughter in Alex Ross's Kingdom Come. And so the fact that I asked her if she was familiar with Alex Ross's work just made me like feel about that big. But she was super sweet and really nice, and actually stopped to, we took some pictures together, and we're actually friends on Facebook now. But it was just, turned around and I was like, "Oh, thank you very much." And as soon as, it's kind of one of those things where as soon as you say something, you realize what you've done and you wish you could just reach out and pull it back, and it's not happening. So yeah, that's probably my best cosplay story so far anyway.
It's pretty great. I wanted to share a story. It's not really a funny story, but it was touching for me. It was my second year costuming. Remember that first year I had made this terrible Superman costume at the Superman celebration, and I came back the second year and I made a few during the 12 months in between. I made a Batman and a Superman and a Captain America. And so at the next celebration, I was wearing that Captain America costume. And again, I look back at those pictures and I'm like, "Oh, that's awful. I wouldn't want to wear that anymore." But my family and I, and we do a lot of family stuff. The kids were all in costume. My wife was in costume. But we were just walking through the street, kind of minding our own business, when out of nowhere, this little 4 or 5-year-old boy ran up to me, wrapped his arms around my legs, hugged me super tight and said, "I love you, Captain America," and then disappeared back into the crowd. And I was just standing there, just so moved by this little kid who came up out of nowhere and hugged me. I knew right at that moment, oh, I'm going to be doing this for a long time. I'm going to keep doing this as long as I can, because it just felt so good. And you could see the joy in that little kid's face. It was a wonderful experience. And that's when I knew that this is what I wanted to do as a long-term hobby.
I'm like Scott. I mean, I've got a lot of stories I think I could go through. They were just fun and just eventful. I think leaning back on the Metropolis things, I think my second, maybe my third year there, I was in a similar situation as Scott, where I'm dressed as Green Lantern, and I'm just walking around, and I'm just walking about, leaving the museum at that time, and some guy just yells, "Hey!" And I turned, and there's a little kid out of breath at my side. He's like, Green Lantern, can I have your picture?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah, I am Green Lantern today." And so the gentleman, he walks up and says, my kid's been chasing you for 3 blocks. It's like, can we get a picture? Yeah, I just, in my mind, I'm Robin walking down the street, didn't really think about it, but he had been yelling Green Lantern the whole time while I'm just in awe of everything I'm seeing. Didn't even hear the young kid. And so I thought that was pretty fun. I think the only other time that stands out was when I was my composite Superman Batman. I do a lot of the events here with CASA and the Children's Hospital, and they had a 5K. And so no one really knows who composite Superman is. It's always, "Hey, are you mixed up today? Couldn't decide." And so I just, at that point, kids are like, you get to the point where you're tired of explaining who composite Superman is. And so I get there and it's like, "So what happened?" I was like, I just wanted to be the best of both. I couldn't decide which one. What do you think? And so that's how I ended up playing the whole composite thing when I meet up with little kids. So it keeps a smile going. You know, you don't make it as serious as like some conventions would do. So those are the two situations that stand out most with me. And they all, like Scott said, a lot of them have to do with either being fans ourselves or dealing with little kids. You know, that's why we do this. We have fun. We get to, you know, entertain our youthful side, keep ourselves motivated and having fun.
I can say, can I say something?
Yeah, Joel.
Thank you. I just want to say, even though I've never been in the cosplay, and maybe in the future I will, but just listening to your passion is so invigorating. I talk about the Shazam and Isa show going heavenward, and I get so excited. So I feel your passion. I know exactly what you're saying with your cosplay. It's the same passion. I'm just excited for you, and just being in your company. It's just an honor just to hear that good passion. And like I've always said, I feel about the Shazam Isis Hour the way you talk about your cosplay. So thank you.
Okay.
Hi, Michael.
Well, and I think we're out of time now. We got another group coming in. And I don't know if Kelly's still lagging behind or what, but I just want to say thanks to everybody for coming. Thanks for letting us talk. It's been great talking with Bob and with Robin, two guys that I love, and I love both of their work. So I hope you guys have a great rest of the weekend.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Scott.
Appreciate it, Scott.
Thank you, everybody. Appreciate you putting up with the stories and kind of the rambling. So take care, everybody.
Nice.
Yeah, everybody be safe out there. We look forward to seeing you when we can get all this COVID stuff over with.
Amen.
Guys, I want to thank you for doing the cosplay panel for us.